Do you want more? More time, more balance, more love, more sex, more money, more real, and less bullshit? This is the Women Wanting More podcast with Dr. Karen Osborne. Real life, real stories, plus real tips to get you more of what you want.
So let me share something that happened to me when I was at a women's retreat. When was that? About a week and a half ago. If you go back to an episode, which isn't too far back from this one, which is called Why I Left. Yes, I did not complete the women's retreat, like the program that I was in. I stayed on the facility, and you can hear all about the story there. But there is an experience that I want to share with you that was pretty profound for me. And it would happened on the last day I was there. So it was, I got there on Friday night. I got there Friday afternoon. The retreat, kind of the workshop portion of it, began that Friday night. It was Saturday during the day, Sunday, and we would have finished by noon, right? So when I had left, and I will actually put that episode in the show notes, so it's handy for you, but it's about 4 or 5 episodes back. I'm still on the grounds. I actually considered, I'm like, let me see if I can change my flight, go home earlier. The only way I would have gotten home earlier was if I left at 6:30 in the morning, which means I got to get out, 2 hours before, because it's an international flight home to Canada, and I was dealing with an immense headache. I was not feeling well, digestive stuff. I was like, there's no fucking way I'm getting up at and then it's a 40-minute drive to the airport from where, just fuck it. So I stayed there. And there was lots of different things on the grounds. And one thing that they had said to go and do, and to go see, was this big redwood tree. Now, it was in the Santa Cruz Mountains where this retreat center was. It's called 1440 Multiversity. It's amazing. I'll put the link in there too, because I'm going up to another one in January, but I've learned some lessons, and that it's important to know who is speaking, leading the retreat before you go, and that's something that, is really you, because that was one piece of why that didn't work for me, even though I did get what I needed from the whole experience. But they said, listen, you got to go down, even though we're in the Santa Cruz Mountains, there's redwood trees, beautiful, nature all around you. You got to go this one tree. It's this mother tree. It's massive, and you got to go. There's a little baby tree next to it. And there was supposed to be some piece of art, I don't know what it was, but you just gotta, or I'm not gonna tell you what it is, it's gotta go down and you gotta touch it. I'm like, okay, I'm intrigued as to what this is, right? And I have, I could just sit there and read the whole rest of the time, and I'm I'm gonna explore the grounds and get out into nature, and it was lovely day. And so I go down to where this tree is supposed to be, and there's an outdoor amphitheater. And there's another workshop that's going on, because there's several going on the campus at the same time. And this one, which was called Choir, which is teaching people, I think not just how to sing, but how to sing together, in harmony. And it was just, everyone was talking about it when I would go in for meals and stuff, right? Overhear conversations. And said it was amazing. But I go down there, and so they're singing down there, right? They're singing, which is funny too. They're singing a song which is called It's a Mad World, which is, I've only heard it from Tears for Fears, that band. Amazing song, incredible song. But so I go down there, and I'm like, I gotta think this is the tree, but I feel like I'm interrupting, even though you could walk around, it was fine, but it didn't feel right. So I'm like, I don't know where this thing is. Maybe some of the amphitheater, they're in their workshop. I can't just walk in front and, So I started to go up, and I noticed when I went down to where the redwood was, or this big mother redwood tree, or where it's supposed to be, there was a labyrinth. So I don't know if you know what a labyrinth is, but it is, kind of think of it like a maze, right? It's in a big circle. And a labyrinth is designed for you to walk it. Meditating, for you to, to walk it as kind of like a Zen-like thing. And it wasn't that big. And I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to walk this labyrinth. And so I start to walk it, and again, it's not a big one, right? But the thing I want to speak to is not walking the labyrinth, but what I saw in the labyrinth. And at one point in it, there was a big sculpture. And it's so funny. Now that I'm thinking, I'm sharing the story, I'm maybe this is the thing you were supposed to touch, right? Maybe this was the piece of art. Seriously, maybe this was the piece of art. I can't believe I'm just realizing this right now. This might have been the piece of art they were referring to. It wasn't that close to redwood trees, but So it was like, consider like, the statue of Venus. I think it's called Venus, which is like a very, of the time, voluptuous woman. Like, I think it's like her naked body. But this was kind of one similar, but it's almost like if she had like a draping over top of it, right? But what was interesting is that her face, and again, this is like a big piece, probably made of like sandstone or something, right? And it's probably about as tall as me. So it's probably like about, I'm like 5'6", so maybe it's a little bit higher. Maybe it's 5'8" or something like that. And over her face is almost like if you took like whatever that thing was made of, like sandstone, whatever, like a blanket, and you put it over her head, that's what it would look like. So you couldn't see her face. And so you just saw her body, and the title of it, or what it said next to it, was Metamorphosis. And I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. And then, this is, you know what? I think this is the thing I'm supposed to touch. I can't believe I'm just realizing this right now. Because it's like, you got to touch it. So there's a little thing that says, touch slowly with one finger. So I'm like, touch slowly. This thing looks like big and heavy. Like, what do you mean? So I touch it and just kind of like moves a little bit, right? So it's almost like you could spin it around, or I'm not really certain what the whole kind of purpose is. Maybe it was kind of like each time you, like it's an actual touchstone. Like each time you touch the Metamorphosis, this big statue of this, voluptuous woman, as you're doing the labyrinth walk. But I'm looking at this, right? And I'm like, Metamorphosis, right? What do you think of when you think of that word? I think of a caterpillar to a butterfly. And I think of what happens in a caterpillar, as you know, we all know this, right? Even my kids know this, right? They're going to then, I forget the different names of things, right? But I can think of kids, of some of the boys' stories that talk about it and explain this, right? And changing into the butterfly. But the caterpillar goes through this period of time where it's like eating food, and then it rests for a period of time, and it creates that kind of cocoon. And then after a period of time, it now comes out of that cocoon kind of as like rebirthed as a butterfly, right? So I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, man, this thing's rich with metaphors for me. Like there's, and as I'm kind of seeing more and more, and I see where it's like the kind of the, what looks like, say, like a blanket, like in cement or sandstone or whatever this thing is made of, over her face, I'm like, the process that I'm going through right now, and the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I feel that every woman will go through at least once in her life, if not several times, a metamorphosis of sorts. Whether it's when you first become a wife, maybe it's when you, leave home for the first time. Maybe it is when you become a mother. Maybe it's when you're like me and you're going through menopause and you're from 50 and you have all this shit that just seems like it just comes crashing down, or you can't even really even point to, well, it's this thing, right? Some women, metamorphosis is maybe after a divorce, and they kind of come into themselves again. Metamorphosis, where it feels like the you that you knew is no longer there, that you were just like that caterpillar that is going through this period of time that it takes to, is it called chrysalis? I think it's chrysalis, where they go into the cocoon thing. I think that is. And that period of time is the period of time. The biggest thing that I struggle with right now, even still, 5 months in this process of when my 49th birthday, I'm in the emergency room with what I thought was a blood clot, and everything just felt like it just came crashing down. And although I could feel the build leading up to this moment of this breakdown experience, that was like the pivotal point, right? That was like that was the tipping point where everything just kind of, how do I describe this? It's so funny because I still have a hard time kind of like explaining this. It just felt like everything was not what I knew the world to be, knew myself to be. And so this time period of thinking like, okay, well, I'm going through some stuff and I had this injury and it's the third time that I haven't been able to compete, and I've been training to box for like 2 years now. And like, it's part of that. And it's this injury and feeling like I'm a strong woman and why do I have an injury and I can barely walk, and they have no idea when this swelling from what they thought was a blood clot, which wasn't, was a Baker's cyst, but that's a whole other story. But they're like, it could be months. And I'm like, I don't do this. What do you mean? I'm not the sick one. Like all of this shit to feeling frustrated with my business and trying to reach more women, to like, it just went on and on and on. It was just this snowball effect of everything. And as I went through this, and as I'm going through this process and connecting more to spirituality and God, and realizing that the reason that I don't feel like me, the reason that I have this blanket over my face, that I am becoming somebody different, and I'm remembering who I am in this transformation, in this breakdown, breakthrough, whatever you want to describe it, this metamorphosis, is because I'm not that same woman anymore. I'm not. So just like that caterpillar becomes the butterfly, right? They are not the same. Caterpillar to butterfly, two entirely different beings. And feeling like not knowing what's going on. And also feeling, this is what I'm starting to lead into, feeling that like there's got to be a timeline, right? So when this happened on my birthday, which is towards the end of May, and, went through a lot of stuff. And I remember like my therapist saying, Karen, why don't you just take the summer off, be with your kids, like rest, just pour into you, take care of you. And, you'll come back in September and the kids are back to routine and kind of back into work and business and how you like to do things. And I'm like, it took me a long time. And I'm like, okay. To be the me that says, I'm just going to cut the brakes on like producing and creating, for the most part, outside of this podcast, and I had one coaching program still going at the time, but for the most part too, cutting off anything that I'm earning financially is like weird. I've literally worked since I was 8 years old, started with a paper route. I've always made money. And so even not to have like that is like, what am I? Like, what the fuck? But here I sit. Today's November the 6th as I record this episode. So this happened on my birthday in May, June, July, August, September, October. 5 months, 5.5 months later, close 5.5 months. And I don't necessarily feel closer to having some clarity. I do and I don't. I will have days where things feel really clear. I will have days, and I can see above, right? It's like looking down, I can see myself in the experience and go, no, Karen, this is happening because it's really just a letting go again, that metamorphosis that's happening. And yeah, you don't feel like you anymore because you're not that anymore. And you're remembering who you truly are at your core. And this experience is providing you that. And by the way, there's no specific timeline for that. And for me, who has always been I'm going to get shit done, whatever it takes, I will not give up. I will be persistent. I will do whatever is necessary to do that thing. And yeah, I'll get it done when I want to get it done. To be at this point, 5.5 months in and just be like, I still don't really feel like I live in that world anymore because I don't. And looking at other women that are in that, production creative mode, doing lots of cool stuff. One of my husband's main business is called Laptop Lifestyle Mentor. And he had a live event this past weekend, which I have helped out at his last two events. And we kind of went back and forth. Am I going to speak? Am I going to help out? And I was really just like, you know what? I just feel like such a mess. I don't know what I could even contribute. Let alone I need to be there for the kids right now. It's important that I'm picking up the kids and being there for them. And they're both having some different challenges with school and things that I'm helping them to navigate. And, it's choice, yes, but I got to be there for them. Like, I signed up for this motherhood thing, man. This is what is required for my kids. And so when I see women that were there and they're like doing all this cool stuff and they're on the video and stuff, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was me. I'm having these strange feelings of like jealousy and envy and just being like, I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, well, none of them must work. They don't have kids, right? He's like, no, I think all of them are wrong. I think they're older though, they're kids. And I mean, I know I got boys that are 5 and 8. It's different than when they start to get older, and all moms tell me this, and all parents tell me this. And, I get it. But there is this metamorphosis, and there is no specific time period that it has to fit into. And, I think one of even the stranger piece of this is like, I'm not under the gun to produce and earn money. I'm thankful that I have a husband who is providing this for our family and doesn't need me necessarily to be able to earn to provide for our family and for each other. Like, I'm very fortunate to have that. And yet, there's still this feeling of, yeah, but, like somehow I'm like Superwoman and I can do stuff like faster than anybody else. That somehow like, the Metamorphosis rules don't apply to me. Like, I'm just gonna like 10x that one, right? And so sucked into our society, which is everything faster, everything better, everything more efficient, like, crush it, get it done, grind, hustle. And it's like, all of me is just saying, Karen, that's not you. This metamorphosis and this holding on still a little bit, like it's not even by a thread. I'd say it's still like a good chunk of fabric. And I imagine that women that go through a divorce, and still maybe kind of like mourn that marriage or the family, right? And how that's now affecting if there's kids involved, and maybe still wish that things were the way they were, right? Fully realizing and accepting the present that's in front of them, but still kind of like pining for what was. And so if you're going through a metamorphosis right now, sister, of whatever that is for you, I want you to know that number one, it's okay. Number two, it's normal. Number three, you are not alone. And number four, the time it takes is the time that it takes. I don't feel that these things you can rush, I still recall a friend of mine who was also our financial advisor when we lived in Alberta. His name is Jack. Wonderful, wonderful man. And they lost their grandson very suddenly in a tragic accident. He was 8, same age that my Tyson is now. And I remember him, and it just crushed him. That was his grandson, and the whole family, and devastating. And I remember he said he had a colleague, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 months in after Jack had passed away, and said, I'm sorry, the boy's name is Jackson. My friend's name, confusing this now. My friend Jack, his son Jackson, which is named after him, and kind of said something to the effect of, shouldn't you be past this now? Mourning his grandson. And Jack, who was, and I'm still sure is, the sweetest man ever, he was telling me, kind of describing it, and it was like, whoa, man, you got a fierceness, and I haven't seen that before, Jack. And he got in his face, and he goes, when do you think I should be done grieving the loss of my 8-year-old grandson? Like, there is no timeline for these things. And I think the more that we like push and we try to make things happen when it simply needs to play out, it needs to, like a fever, it needs to run its course. It needs to have the freedom to express itself as it needs to. And so whatever metamorphosis you are going through or have gone through, and maybe kind of like you're like that colleague of Jack's going, well, I should be done. Like I said, I should be through this now. Should I? Says who? Says who? So here's your more tip for today then, sister. See, I know right now, if you're listening to this podcast, you've either been through some kind of metamorphosis or you're going through one right now. And so this is your only more tip. There's nothing for you to do. I just want you to ponder this thought. And perhaps have this as a mantra, which is this: the time it takes is the time it takes. The time it takes is the time it takes. The time it takes is the time it takes. I want you to let that sink in. You can marinate on that one. I love that word, marinate. Just like simmer in it, right? The time it takes is the time it takes. This is your life. This is your process. This is your experience. This is your journey. It's nobody else's. And there's a trust and a surrender that comes along with that that's hard, right? I know we all might not describe ourselves as being controlling, but we all have a piece of us that kind of wants to steer the ship a little bit, right? It's hard to let go. But the time it takes is the time it takes, sister. So 2 things finishing up from this long episode today. Number 1, I want you to make sure that you get one of the last Women Wanting More limited edition journals. I'm shipping out 13 today. There's been a lot of you that have ordered some recently, so I'm shipping out 13 just today to US, Canada, and Australia. So if you would like one of the limited edition Women Wanting More journals, orange, leather, beautiful. I'm going to send you some other cool Women Wanting More swag with it. This is it. I'm not doing these again. I love sending them out, but it's a lot of fucking work. It's been over 500 that I've sent out personally. Me, one at a time over the last year. So head over to drkarenosburn.com/free journal. So that's drkarenosburn.com/free journal. And also make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter so you get everything in the loop about Women Wanting More, the tribe, this family, this community. And you'll get updates on my book, which is coming out when it comes out. Time it takes is the time it takes. Plus, I'm going to send you some amazing training videos as well as a special gift. So that's over at drkarenosburn.com/action guide. So I will talk to you in the next episode, sister. A life of more is just one step away from you being okay with the metamorphosis that is happening in your life or is happening in the past. I love and appreciate you.
To get the show notes of each Women Wanting More episode, including the How to Get More tip, subscribe to the newsletter at drkarenosburn.com/newsletter.